Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 3 of lesson 3 on modern existentialism. The name of this third lesson is Living Existentially. And in the previous video, part 2, we learned the most important process within modern existentialism, which is the existential choice. And if you haven't had a chance to watch this video, I encourage you to watch it before you watch this video because otherwise this is not going to make a whole lot of sense. So, and it's one of those videos that is essential, fundamental to understand this philosophy. So maybe you watched it. So if you did, try to watch it again and see if you can find even more useful information, because there's a lot of information there. Great information. In this video though, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be considering the same idea, the concept of the existential choice, but we're going to be doing some sort of compare and contrast analysis. We're going to just so you see the value of the existential choice process, friends. And you're going to see that in the context of other accounts of choices, and more specifically, psychological accounts of choices. We're going to see how the existential choice can actually not complement, but can actually fill in the gaps in psychological accounts of choices. I said in the past more than once that existentialism and psychology have a lot in common. There's a lot of common ground. And yet, they're not the same thing, obviously. In this video, you're going to get to see how they are different in considering the psychological account or take on choices. You're going to see what the psychological account or accounts leave aside, they ignore. And that's going to be very helpful. So you get to see the value of this process of the existential choice. Another thing that I said about psychology and existentialism in the past, and I think I said this in the very first video, on part 1 of the first lesson. I compared psychological pain with emotional pain. And I said that that's because there's a lot of common ground also between emotions or feelings and psychology. As a matter of fact, the psychological take on choices, or their approach on choices, it's very feeling, emotions driven. You're going to see that in a moment. So, and if you think about it, most psychological accounts on anything, on life in general, right, and on choices in particular, and on mental health, they all rely on feelings and emotions. I mean, think about the fact that when you are diagnosed with depression, right, what they give you, the first thing, that probably they're going to tell you, you're the specialist, the therapist, the first thing they're going to recommend you to do is to take some antidepressant, right? Some SSRIs, right? Hormones, so you can get to feel a little happier. And what those SSRIs are hormones that trigger feelings, emotions. As you might know, hormones have a lot to do with our emotion system, our feeling system. And that's just one example, right? The psychologists process and try to understand everything about human life and about mental health concerns from that perspective, from the perspective of feelings, emotions. Once again, you're going to see that in this video. But that does not tell the whole story of why we're feeling depressed, or we're feeling anxious, or we're feeling miserable. There are other things that have very little to do with emotions. And those things are part of the existential choice process. So before I start showing you, sharing the information from this slide, let's just do a quick review on the existential choice. And I'm sorry for being repetitive, friends, but I am an educator, and this is what educators always do, right? We always review, just because we want to make sure the ideas are fully understood. So here we go. The existential choice process is a four-step process. Every time you're confronted with a choice that you feel like you have to make a choice, you're considering doing something, right? You're considering doing A. Okay, the existential choice. So you do this choice the right way, the existential way. You got to meet these four stages or four steps. The first step is an assessment in which you consider the pros and cons, the benefits cost of choosing A. You consider also the risks you're taking, the possible scenarios, especially the worst case scenarios. You want to anticipate that, and you want to come up with a plan B, C, or D, right? If you feel like you end up in one of those negative scenarios or bad scenarios that you're considering in the assessment that might take place as a result of choosing A. So you do all this assessment in your mind before you make a choice. Obviously, you want to know what you're getting into. As simple as that. Okay. The second step is a value analysis. Once you fully understand what you're getting into and the possible consequences, right, of your action of choosing A, you want to ask yourself where your values, your personal values stand regarding this choice A. You want to know if these choice align with your values, your personal values, or in other words, with who you are. Okay? If this is something that aligns with who you are, if you're not going to feel like you're betraying yourself or you're losing yourself in the process. So, okay, you want to make sure that, okay, if I choose A, I still going to feel like a sense of, okay, that this is me. Okay, that I'm not going with the flow. All right, so that's the second step. Very importantly, I said this before, following Carl Jung, that there's two modes of learning, let's say. This is something we learned in the previous lesson. There's two modes of learning, two ways to learn about the world. One is through our thinking, the other way is through our feelings, right? And Carl Jung says that it is through our feelings that we learn what's valuable. Okay, so there's a relationship there between our feelings and what is valuable to us personally. So we talked about this before also in the previous lesson, the role of our feelings in finding out, what's really, really important for us, what's really, really meaningful to us. And that tells us who we are, right? Those values. Okay, so that's where the feelings play a big, very important role in our philosophy in modern existentialism. Anyways, step two, value analysis. Step three, you write a justification to yourself. You write down why you're going to be making this choice. So when you're dealing with difficult circumstances after you've made your choice, okay, then you remind yourself why you got there in the first place. And you want to tell yourself that even though you're probably struggling, you knew this would happen. So you know what you're doing, right? You should know. So this is the third step. And finally, then you make your choice. You either choose A or not A. Okay, that's the whole thing again. So now let's consider a psychological approach to choices. And this one coming from this book I think it's a great book. I mean, I highly recommend this book, Living an Examined Life. There's a lot of wisdom there. But it's a book written by a psychologist, a clinical psychologist. So you're always going to see gaps. Always going to get an incomplete, let's say, account on the issue, and this one in particular on the issue of choices. So let's read it. On the subject of choices, Dr. James Hollis points out the importance of our feelings in his book, Living an Examined Life. Now I'm quoting, "Whatever health and wholeness is, it surely involves aligning our outer choices with our inner reality." Absolutely agree, right? We know this. I like the word aligning here. Okay, so this sounds a little like step 2, like the value analysis. Okay, I'm going to continue reading. He says, when the path we are on is right for us, the energy is there. Energy. When what we are doing is wrong for us, we can temporarily mobilize energy in service to goals. But in time, such forced mobilization leads to irritability, anger, burnout, and symptoms of all kinds. By energy, it's more feelings. But I'll give you a concrete example in a moment. Let me just finish with a quote first. When what we are doing is right for us, the feeling function supports us. This support confirms the rightness of our choices. Even when those around us do not endorse them, even if people around us disagree that what we're doing is the right thing, we feel it is the right thing. And that confirms the choice we've made is the right one. When we are doing what is right for us, we feel a sense of purpose, meaning, and satisfaction. And that communicates itself to others also. This is so interesting. I think it's just so interesting, having the process of the existential choice in mind. It's interesting because there's so many gaps and so many assumptions. And looking at the very last part of the quote, that our feelings give us a sense of purpose, meaning, and satisfaction. Okay, I thought meaning was obtained through our thinking capacity. I think it is through our thinking that we uh, comprehend, grasp what it's meaningful, what has meaning. But meaning, because meaning speaks of something concrete, something that can be articulated. Feelings don't articulate things very clearly, right? Okay, so or I should say, Dr. Hollis is telling us here that whenever we make a choice, we'll know it's the right choice later. When our feelings actually tell us this was the right choice. Or if we don't have those feelings, if we experience negative feelings like anger, burnout, right? Irritability, then that's going to tell you, okay, you've made the wrong choice, dude. How interesting. Okay, so that means what? I mean, think about a choice. Let's say you chose to start up a business, okay? And okay, you've made your choice, and now what? And now you're struggling because, there's not a whole lot of money coming in, bills are piling up, and you feel irritated, you feel frustrated and burnout, and you keep working and working on your business. And look what it says here. Uh, when it says when what we are doing is wrong for us, we can temporarily mobilize energy in service to goals. So, in other words, if you're in that situation in which your business is not doing well and you're frustrated, okay, mobilize energy. Like, okay, have a positive attitude, right? Do something great. Throw a party so you can put some good vibes into the situation. My brother used to work many, many years ago at a mechanic shop. And at this mechanic shop, I remember when business was slow, the 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 shop owner he would buy pizza for everybody. Because when he saw everybody was, all the employees getting like concerned, okay, business was really, really slow, and he would see the concerned faces on their employees. He would buy pizza for everybody. He would start playing loud music, and he would have like a little party, right? To just try to bring in some good vibes, right? So maybe then good things will come, and eventually, and then customers will start coming again, and that sort of thing. Okay, well, if that doesn't work, then such forced mobilizations will lead to irritability, anger, burnout, and negative symptoms of all kinds. So you're trying to fight this thing with feelings, with good vibes and energy. Interesting. Let's say you got into a relationship, sentimental relationship, and you're feeling great. Oh, everything's going great. Well, you feel super happy. Okay, so you're feeling great. That means you've made the right choice. That relationship is good. Now, if you're not feeling that, you're feeling the opposite, depressed, sad, you're feeling frustrated, misunderstood, and it's all these negative feelings. Okay, then that, starting that relationship was wrong, was the wrong thing to do because your feelings are telling you, right? And in the end, he says here, um, your feelings confirm the rightness of our choices. Huh, okay. Well, the existential choice says otherwise. It says, okay, first of all, you got to make an assessment. Before you make your choice, before you start your business or this relationship, you got to make a well detailed, high resolution assessment of the situation. You got to know what you're getting into. And if the issue is, or if the thing in question is, the choice in question is starting up a business, gosh, you got to be very diligent in gathering information because you want to know, you want to study the market, you want to study your product, the product you're selling or the service you're selling. You want to know is whether the potential customers in the area of your business, and you got to do some research, friends, so you know the potential of success for your business, right? This is a lot of work. And another thing you need is a plan B, a backup plan, or you need some savings, right? Because most businesses, when they start, they don't start like successfully, like making a lot of money since day one. The opposite is true. Businesses begin to prosper and to actually be successful like a year or 2 years later. So maybe it's a good idea to have some savings. I've known business people who they start a business when they already have one that it's stable, it's good, solid, bringing in a lot of money, and with that they're able to sustain a second business, right? Because they know that at the beginning your business is not gonna produce a whole lot. It's not gonna, bring a lot of money. So okay, these are things you have to assess before you start the business, right? Before you make the choice of starting up a new business. And then the value analysis. Now, this is when you start paying attention to your feelings prior to making your choice. Prior to start your business, you ask yourself, okay, starting up this business, is this something that aligns with my values, with who I am? How do I feel about this business? Is this me? Is this business me? Or how do I feel? Do I feel excited? Do I feel happy? Do I feel like I'm not betraying myself in any way by starting up this business? Okay, that's the value analysis. That's where you consider feelings, right? Before you make your choice. Then we got the justification part, and then boom, you make your choice. So, oh gosh, so it's not like Dr. Hollis is painting it here, like portraying it here for us. It's not like that. Feelings are important, but you don't assess the feelings later after you've made your choice. That's not very wise, people. And I don't mean this as a criticism against Dr. Hollis. I already said this book is a great book. It's a beautiful book. But I always gonna see when I read these books, I always see the flaws, right? The gaps. And that's what I want you to see, right? How modern existentialism can fill in those gaps meaningfully, okay? In a way that you can go, yeah, it's true, that makes sense. I like that about modern existentialism and the existential choice. I hope you're saying that right now, right? Or thinking it. Okay, so but there's more. There's another psychologist I want you to consider. This one, it's a social psychologist, Mr. Brian Lowery, of whom we spoke already I think, in our first lesson. A couple of very interesting insights into the problem of not making existential choices can be found in Brian Lowery's book, Selfless. Please allow me. And in this book, Selfless, he writes, if you pine for a child and then you have one, you might downplay the sleep deprivation and other costs of parenthood to make sense of your choice. and probably to maintain your sanity. Meaning what? Meaning, okay, you've made a choice. You wanted to have a child. Now you have a child. It's a newborn. And now you're struggling, right? You're not sleeping a whole lot and you're feeling frustrated and you're seeing probably you're spending a lot more money now. And okay, if I go by the previous account of choices by Dr. Hollis at this point, I would go like, oh, I made the wrong choice, right? Because I feel so bad. I shouldn't have had this child. Okay, but Brian Lowery here is telling us something a little different. Like he's saying that what sometimes people do is they rationalize, they come up with a justification later once they've made their choice and once they're living the consequences of that choice. They're struggling because they probably didn't see that coming, or they um, they didn't consider it like a big thing. Okay, yeah, you're not gonna sleep a whole lot when you have a child, and maybe they disregarded that, and now they're suffering, right? Because gosh, I gotta say, friends, I have three daughters, right? And being a parent, it's a beautiful thing. It's a most rewarding thing. It's just it really complements someone's life like in a tremendous positive way. I've heard so many people saying things like that, like what makes life meaningful and happy, it's having children, right? And I mean, I don't disagree with that, even though it's me, it's different. But you see what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's a great thing to have children, but dealing with a newborn, it's probably this is probably the most difficult stage of parenthood. The first 3 months, friends, they're really, really difficult. They drain you, your energy, your everything, man. It's very likely to find yourself in a place of negative emotions when you're dealing with a newborn. But Mr. Lowery here is saying that when people find themselves in this situation, they rationalize. They downplay the sleep deprivation and other costs to make sense of their choice and maintain their sanity. So okay, I made a choice. So how do I make sense of? Oh, okay. Well, it's not really a whole lot. It's not too bad. The sleep deprivation is not too bad, right? They tell themselves. That's downplaying the struggle, right? And the bills and all that stuff to maintain one's sanity. Okay, so how about instead the existential choice? You're going to have a baby, and you already know because it's not your first child. So you already know what you're getting into. You know. Okay, if at this point, if you had a child already, okay, you know what you're getting into. But if you have not, okay, then the assessment, right? You gotta talk to people, man. Talk to people who have had children, people you regard highly, you esteem. Say, hey, tell me, okay, I want to be a dad. What am I getting into here? What is the most difficult thing? Especially tell me about the first month or whatever. I mean, make it very, very real to me in detail. What am I going to be dealing with? What am I getting into here? What struggles am I going to have? And tell me everything. And then talk to other people so you have a clear idea of what it is you're getting into. The sleep deprivation and what that means exactly in detail. In detail. You got to be able to, you got to listen to people telling you about those long nights. And so you get a sense of, wow, that's not going to be great. Listen to the bad and listen to the goods too, right? Listen to the benefits, consider the benefits. And in the end, make a choice. Well-informed choice. So later, you don't have to downplay anything. You knew, you knew that would happen to you. And if you need to maintain your sanity, instead of coming up with rationalizations and excuses in your mind, how about you go back to the justification you wrote before you had your child? How about going back and read it and read it to yourself? Okay, this is why I did it. Now read it. That's going to help you maintain sanity for sure. And not just that, not just sanity. It's going to maintain the meaning, the value of your choice of having this child. You know what's coming later. Later, you're going to see, you're going to have some beautiful experiences with your child. Absolutely. And that should be in your justification. This is just a phase, right? Maybe you have that in just your justification. I had it in mind. Right now, I have a 3 weeks old baby, my third child. And I knew full well what it would be like, right? The first weeks. So I haven't been sleeping really, really well lately, but that's okay. I knew it would happen. I knew it. So, and I'm happy, friends, because you know what? That was no accident. I'm living my life with intention, with purpose, and all the things that I'm dealing with, and even the struggles. I anticipated them. I knew I would have those struggles. And I knew beforehand how I would navigate through those struggles. And here I am, and I'm fine. So that's a beautiful way of living, friends. Gosh, I hope you, I said it in the previous video, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Pick one thing, one important thing that you need to do it the existential way. Do the existential choice process. And the most important part, the assessment, well, every part is important. But the assessment, you got to do it right, friends, right in detail. So talk to people, inform yourself the best you can, know full well the risk, the struggles that you're going to face, full well what you're getting into, the worst case scenarios and all, and how you're going to deal with those scenarios. Okay, I've said that many times already. So let's go to the next slide. Also from the same book, right? Selfless by Mr. Lowery. He writes, sometimes a relationship can feel claustrophobic. You see, it's all about feelings, right? A relationship can feel claustrophobic. Suddenly, you find yourself in interactions that you can't avoid, ones that always end in a frustrating argument or leave you feeling lesser than or disgusted by the person's weakness. Maybe it's a marriage coming apart at the seams because your ambitions are not aligned. Didn't I say that? I love that word, align. When things align, the outer with the inner, they must align. In these situations, there's a feeling of limitation, definitely. You can't be the person you would like to be. Do you remember this is what Carl Rogers said following Kierkegaard? That it is everybody's goal to be who they are. That's kind of like what everybody wants to be genuine. Okay, well, if you're not having that, if you don't feel you're living a genuine life, you're not being yourself, then you're going to struggle. You're going to feel limited. And in the context of relationships, right? So to finish with a quote, the relationship is holding you back in some way. Interesting. Some way. We don't know what way. But in some way, you feel limited. In some way, the relationship is holding you back. In some way, you're not being the person you are, or you want to be. In some way. And that's why there's also maybes, right? In the quote, in the first paragraph. Maybe it's a marriage coming apart at the seams because your ambitions are not aligned. Maybe. Well, how about doing away with these maybes by doing it the existential way? You're going to start up a relationship, okay? Before you make that choice, do it the existential way. Do the process, the existential choice process. Now, in regarding relationships, though, it's different because of course it like the saying, right? It takes two to tango. So in this case, someone else is directly involved and fully involved, right? So the ideal thing to do when it comes to relationships, and especially choices you have to make within let's say your marriage, well, you got to do those choices together with your significant other. So you've got to do the assessment that the four steps, right, of the existential choice. You got to do it with your significant other, right? So if you're considering starting up a relationship or taking this relationship to the next level, making it more formal, or getting married, okay? Excuse me. Hmm. Okay. If you're or you're you're dating this person, and now you want to make it serious and more formal. You want this person to be your fiancé, right? Okay, before you make that choice, because it involves somebody else. I mean, you got to do this with that person together. Okay, say, hey, come here. We've been dating for a while. How about we take this to the next level? We become engaged or whatever. Whatever level you want to take the relationship to. And what do you think? You ask your significant other. That's the person you have to do the assessment with, right? And the value analysis with. Number one, because you both of you want to know what you're getting into. You want to be aware of your shortcomings, right? You want to know what kind of you want to anticipate what kind of struggles and arguments you're going to have, because your significant other, she has this temperament that it's not the same as yours, and then you want to know how you're going to deal with those two different temperaments, and you want to have this conversation with the person and say, hey, how are we going to deal when we have a disagreement? How are we going to do it? What sort of rules are we going to follow? Can we agree on the rules now? If the significant other says, oh gosh, come on, stop asking those questions. You're overthinking it now. No, you're doing the right thing. And you can tell, your significant other, if she or he is not on board with this assessment. Okay, you can tell him or her, hey, why don't you watch this cool videos on modern existentialism, so you see where I'm coming from. We got to do this. This is very important for us to do, right? This assessment. So I'm kidding and I'm not kidding at the same time. I'm sure you're getting me. But you know what I'm saying. So do the assessment together. Okay, so how we're gonna deal with our differences? How are we gonna deal with our finances? Ooh, that's a major one. And how are we gonna resolve our differences? Sometimes I've known people, and I did it for a few years. I had with my wife, we had um, a mentor, let's say, a man and his wife. Whenever my wife and I were stuck in a dispute and we couldn't have an agreement, and we would, this was our agreement. We would go up to this couple, and we would ask for their advice. And we said to ourselves, we would do whatever they tell us to do. Only when we're fine, like we exhausted all the arguments and all the patience, and we're stuck, and we're going through a very difficult time. We cannot know what to do. Okay, let's go up to this couple that we trust and we love, and we'll do what they say. That's a great way to resolve conflicts, right? In a relationship. I highly recommend it. But you can come up with your own ways, right? Rules or whatever. How are you gonna resolve your differences? Do it before you commit to a more serious relationship, and then do the value analysis. Hey, do our values align? Are we pursuing the same things or similar things? Do we value the same things? The things you want to pursue, your goals, do they align with my goals? Or do I see the value in your goals, and do you see the value in my goals? Can you legitimize my values and the values in my goals, and like I do to your goals? This is where, friends, you have that alignment that we were talking about from the quote. Maybe it's a marriage coming apart at the seams because your ambitions are not aligned. Your ambitions, your goals, your pursuits based on your values, what you think it's valuable. So gosh, you gotta do this with this person and say, okay, do our values align, our ambitions, our goals? How are we going to pursue our goals together? How are we going to do it? You want to be whatever. You want to start up a business. I want to get a PhD. Okay, how do we do it? How are we going to work it out? Because my PhD is super important to me. Starting up this business is super important to you, and I validate that. But you have to validate my goal, right? How we're going to do it. What are we going to do first? Can we do both things at the same time? This is not overthinking, friends. This is being wise. This is living with intention. This is not going with the flow, because the alternative is it's not great. It's precisely what the author, what Mr. Lower is describing here. That's the alternative. It's right there on the screen. Having frustrating arguments, living feeling lesser or disgusted by the person's weakness, feeling limited, feeling you're not being the person you would like to be, that your relationship is holding you back. Okay, that's the alternative. So it's up to you to decide, right? How do you want to live your life? How? If your answer is, wow, I want to live my life the best of my abilities. I want my life to be meaningful, intentional. I don't want to struggle, and I don't want to struggle, or at least I don't want to struggle with purposelessly and feeling like nothing makes sense. I don't want to deal with circumstances that I'm not ready to face. Whatever circumstance I want to face, I want to feel like I'm in control, that I can face those circumstances and I can do it successfully. Okay, well, that's what I would say, that's what everybody wants, right? Well, it's work, friends, right? It's work. So the existential process, the existential choice, I should say, it's simple to understand, but it's one thing is to understand it, and a different thing is to actually put it in practice. Because putting it in practice, it's work, and it's courage. It takes courage, right, to open up about your choice. I mean, think about it. You're going to start up a relationship with somebody. I mean, you probably don't want to. You don't feel like, yeah, you should go and talk to dad about it or mom. You don't want to do that. I mean, it's your life. It's your relationship, right? Well, okay. Do it your way. Low resolution assessment. Okay. You don't want to talk to other people. You don't want to get wisdom from other people. You don't want to have a well high resolution, well detailed picture of what you're getting into. Fine. Go for it. Maybe, I mean, best of luck to you for sure. But maybe you're going to end up in a situation like there on the screen, right? So consider the alternative, friends. When you're taking the right steps, and you know you're taking the right steps, and you feel that you're taking the right steps, and you feel great, and your life is going the way you want, as opposed to going with the flow. Well, I'm going to do this today, tomorrow, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a pathetic way of living, friends. Mediocre way of living. Don't do that. Don't be that. Okay, so this is part 3 of living existentially. I have one more video before we finish this third lesson. So I hope you're with me on the next video, next and final of lesson 3, because there's more lessons coming in. And like I always say, if you like the video, please don't forget like and subscribe. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.